Okay, welcome everyone to the Tuesday, June 14th, 2022 regular meeting of the Select Board here in good old town of Kennebunk. So we're going to start the evening with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I figure as long as I can remember the pledge, I'm not losing my marbles, so that's a good thing. Item 2 is consideration approval of minutes, and we have 3. Courtney, are you going to hold down the fort in terms of
It's up to you, Blake. I'm happy to do that. Good with it?
Yeah.
All right. We'll just start out then. The first one, we'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of May 24th, 2022.
I second it.
Moved
I'll
and
second
seconded?
it.
What?
Ooh, tough start.
I second it.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? The motion is approved on a vote of 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent.
I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting on May 31st, 2022.
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? The motion is adopted on a vote of 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent.
And I will make a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting of June 7th, 2022.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? The motion is adopted on a vote of 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent. We don't have any items to be signed or public hearings. Item 5 is public comments. Any public comments? Okay. That item is closed. Item 6, acknowledgements and announcements. Oh, we could skip over this one, Mike, right?
Sure, nothing big.
Do you want to move this to the end of the agenda? That's a tough crowd. Come on, guys, I'm talking. All right, confirm the town manager's nomination of the Kennebunk Fire Rescue Chief. Mr. Justin Cooper has been selected to serve as Kennebunk's next Fire Rescue Chief, replacing Chief Jeff Rowe, who will be retiring on June 24th. Justin offers our community a vast amount of firefighting, EMS, and leadership experience. He is currently employed by the City of Biddeford, where he serves as a fire captain shift commander. He has worked in Biddeford for the past 18 years. He also works as a deputy fire chief for the town of Arundel, where he has served since 2003. His educational background includes a bachelor's degree in kinesiology, exercise physiology from UMass Amherst. Justin's name may sound familiar to many of you, as he serves on the Kennebunk Fire Rescue as a per diem deputy chief, having been employed by the town since 1998. He and his family reside in Kennebunk. We are pleased to welcome Justin to the staff at the town of Kennebunk and look forward to working with him. His starting salary will be $101,000 per year. Justin will begin his duties on July 5th. Justin will be in attendance. Where's Justin? There he is. All right. At tonight's meeting, and per the town charter, the select board confirms the town manager's nomination. So let's do the parliamentary thing first, and then we can get to the town manager's remarks on Justin. So, Courtney.
Yes, I would love to make a motion to confirm the town manager's nomination of Justin Cooper as Kennebunk Fire Rescue Chief and Emergency Management Director, effective July 5th, 2022, for a term expiring on June 30th, 2023. Date all annual appointments expire. If you have questions, see Article 9C.
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, the motion is adopted on a vote of 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent. Mike, to you.
Justin, you can't get away with being in the back row, so come on up toward the front row for a moment for us. I'm going to put you on the spot just a little bit. I've had the distinct pleasure, I have had, of knowing some of Justin Cooper's background and experience for a number of years. Kennebunk launched a national search for the position of firefighter. We had applicants from Arizona through Texas, through Florida, and all the way up the eastern seaboard. And he went through a very extensive vetting process, and to no surprise of mine, rose to the top. We have a person here who is very dedicated to the profession, who is a dedicated professional to Kennebunk, Biddeford, Arundel, and many other locations. There were members of Professional Firefighters Association that sat on the panel. There were veteran fire chiefs who sat on one of our panels, and it was unanimously decided that Justin Cooper should be the person to rise to the top, and he did a fantastic job. Justin, I can't thank you enough. I look very forward to working with you as we advance the Kennebunk Fire Rescue Department together and as a whole community. So congratulations.
So Justin, there we go. Justin, I wanted to add a brief comment. I met you when I interviewed you right in front of the seal for the rock rescue video, and I spent 2.5 hours watching Justin lead a team of EMS professionals as they extricated a man who was trapped beneath the largest piece of rock that you can imagine. It was the size of a refrigerator. And I never been more impressed and more proud of our Kennebunk Fire Rescue than I was on that day. I was impressed with you, Justin, watching you work under tremendous pressure. And for any of you who want to see him in action, there is a video on YouTube that you can go out and watch. It's really worthwhile. So Justin, to you, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. I just want to say that I really look forward to helping to lead the department forward in the future. Chief Rowe has left really big shoes to fill. He's done a wonderful job as the fire rescue chief. I truly appreciate all the years of his leadership and mentoring, and I hope he and his family enjoy his retirement and the new adventures that lie ahead. However, I look forward to his help and being able to lean on him in the future, as we've already discussed. So he's willing to come back and help out, which just talks about his consummate professionalism. I am truly excited, and I feel like I've come full circle with the town of Kennebunk and Kennebunk Fire Rescue. This is the department where I started. My stepfather was a fire officer at Washington Hose, and he's the one that got me into the department originally and changed my entire trajectory in what I was going to do for a career path. Who knew that you could do something as a volunteer and then get paid to do it as a career and actually love it? And how many of us have found a career that we truly love? And I have. I have lived in Kennebunk, and I've been a member of this department since 1998, as mentioned. With tonight's confirmation, I will now have held all the ranks of the fire department in Kennebunk. Over the years, Kennebunk Fire Rescue has afforded me many opportunities to be mentored. Some people's parents who are on the board were some of those mentors. I've been able to seek out education and evolve as a leader. If it wasn't for Kennebunk Fire Rescue, I honestly don't think I would have been as successful as I was with my second family here at Biddeford. I've been here for a lot of the evolution of Kennebunk Fire Rescue, from where it was Kennebunk Fire and Kennebunk Rescue. I worked through 100% volunteerism. I worked through on-call. I was one of the lucky first members to spend some overnights here in the second floor, and woke up to the heat being off in the middle of the winter, shivering. So that was an interesting first experience for overnights here. And then obviously, as we've transformed into per diem and now the mix of full-time. I, again, really look forward to working with all the members of Kennebunk Fire Rescue, the town of Kennebunk department heads, and all of its extremely talented employees, and now all of you, members of the select board. I hope to collaborate with all of you to ensure that the department meets your expectations and that we meet the mission. I really hope to focus on readiness training, preparedness, physical fitness, mental well-being, resilience, and work-life balance for our employees. By doing that, I strongly believe that we can not only retain our members, but recruit others during an era where it's very difficult to obtain and retain high-performing public safety employees. I hope to meet with all of you soon to discuss a lot of this further. Thank you again to Chief Rowe for all of his service.
Thank you, Justin, and welcome. And I imagine we'll be giving Chief Rowe a send-off on a separate occasion here. Now, here's a tough act to follow. New hire Assistant Town Clerk, Mr. Ian McGill, starts with the town on June 22nd in the position of regular part-time Assistant Town Clerk. Ian previously worked for the University of Maine and in Augusta at the Academic Advising Office, assisting students with a variety of questions and academic requirements. Ian earned his bachelor's degree in history from Arcadia University and his master's degree in higher education counseling student affairs with Westchester University. Ian and his family reside in Kennebunk. Please welcome Ian to our team.
Ian would be with us tonight, except
say.
he's in the auditorium working already.
Yeah, in fact, he gave me my ballot this morning, so that's the first time I get to meet him. Okay. You're more than welcome to stay and watch us make sausage here, but you're welcome to go as well. I'm sure you want to take, yeah. Thank you. All right. Moving on to item 7, time-sensitive business and staff presentations. Item A, accept the following donation, $67 from Hannaford's Bloomin' for Good program for the Community Garden Center.
I will make a motion to accept the donation and send a letter thanking them for their kind donation.
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is adopted on a vote of 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent. Item B, award the bid for the apparatus bay concrete floor coating for the fire department. This project will reseal the central station apparatus bay floor with a protective coating and sealant. The square footage is approximately 7,000. The town received 1 bid for the work from Industrial Concrete Services, ICS of Saco, Maine, in the amount of $31,946. The amount budget for this line item is $30,000. After the bid opening, the fire chief contacted the sole bidder and negotiated a price that aligns with the budgeted amount. ICS is the same company that sealed the central station floor in 2004 and the floor in the West Kennebunk station in 2014. The fire chief is recommending the bid be awarded to Industrial Concrete Services for $30,000. Is Chief Rowe still here? Oh,
That was awesome.
I was looking over here.
One last time.
Don't
Your
sneak up
fire
on me
chief,
like that. Don't
Jeff
sneak
Rowe.
up on me. When I buy a new car, I want you to negotiate for me, okay?
okay.
All right, Chief, over to you.
Yeah, this is just ongoing improvements to the floor down at Central Station. We had some capital improvement trench drain work done last year. We removed the kitchen that was out on the apparatus floor the year before, so this is going to redo all of the old ceiling and cover up the new so that it's all contiguous, non-slip and striped and things like that. So this company is very pleased to work with us, as you can tell. They've done several of our department stations.
Okay. Questions for Chief Rowe from the public? All right, Courtney?
All right. I'm going to make a motion to award the bid for the apparatus bay concrete floor coating to Industrial Concrete Services in the amount of $30,000.
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? None opposed. We have approved the motion on a bid, on a vote of 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent. Chief, thank you. Like I said, if you're going into the negotiation business, I'll be looking for you.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Appreciate the support there.
Thank you. Item C, here an update on the activities to date of the Kennebunk Port Fire Department Task Force. This task force was formed to discuss and identify potential opportunities for the sharing of resources that may include equipment and personnel. The Kennebunk and Kennebunk Port fire chiefs, as well as a fire officer and a firefighter from each community, comprise the task force. Chief Rowe will provide the board with an update on efforts of the task force. Back to you, Chief.
Yes, good evening. Yeah, so the task force was authorized by both the communities back in March, I believe, and we started in April to meet every other Wednesday to talk about different items. This all started about vehicles and some other thoughts. In our first meeting, we spent some time addressing a few rules for the meeting process. We decided that we would meet for 1 hour and vote to stay another half an hour if it could, similar to what you folks have around the budget times. This is an effective way to stay on task during a meeting. Another rule is when we assign work to members, they are going to email that work to the group so that we don't use up meeting time to share work, because we have people that come during the daytime for this meeting, and so we want to make it productive as well. So we discussed and came up with 14 items that we felt were areas the two departments could work together to achieve mutual benefits to both communities. And so some of those in no order along with a brief explanation. Sharing of specialty vehicles, and we started talking about a ladder truck, but also a squad type vehicle, and this vehicle that each town would use but not necessarily needed on every call. I Am Responding is a software program that both towns currently use, and we will continue to use that and perhaps share department-wide the different processes for that. So I Am Responding is a program that we get through the county that comes out on the individual cell phones, and it tells them where the calls are, it maps it out and all that, and when the person is responding, they just hit a button, and it tells the different departments that they're on their way. So we would, thinking that we would put our people on the I Am Responding from both communities. Still in discussion. Merge standing operated procedures so that we can work closely together. As I talked when we approved the task force, we do training together now. We do mutual aid and automatic aid fire calls and things like that. So this may lead to something more. One fire chief. We've missed the boat on that because we just hired a new one. So, but talking about that as things grow, that may be something to look at in the long run, to have one administrative person and then an operations or a deputy chief in charge of each of the smaller communities. Emergency medical services, both towns provide emergency medical services, the ambulances and things like that. So it's not just the fire department, could it be EMS to deliver a better product? Officer training, we train each month with Kennebunk, Kennebunk Port, and Arundel now with the firefighter level. And so we were looking to start more of a specified officer training type of a curriculum to help the officers work together, and then maybe they could work across the lines as well. Joining both departments, to have members from Kennebunk join Kennebunk Port and vice versa, then the liabilities and the insurance and the workers' comp, which we need to investigate further, that line may be erased completely. The people that don't join, it's not a penalty if you don't, but that would be something that may benefit us. Share a grant writer. Right now, Kennebunk has a grant writer that we've been very successful with. The grant writer that we have, and we're pleased with his work, will help us with 4 grants per year. That's a lot for one town to keep busy. So perhaps if we shared that cost to the grant writer, because when we receive grants, and we've been fortunate, i.e. the SAFER grant and the AFG grant, that grant writer's fees come back to the community anyway. But to allow that sharing of that person, Kennebunk's already put in for a grant this year for equipment. There's 3 more grants that this gentleman could help us with. So that's the idea that we were talking about that. The other area would be a mechanic to work on fire trucks. We've got 18 vehicles, and I don't know the count right off now that Kennebunk Port has, but we could have a specially trained person just on fire apparatus. We've talked with the police department in sharing a mechanic just here in Kennebunk, and this is just an outreach of that. Purchasing, standard purchasing of specialized equipment. There was a couple of communities up in Maine that just bought 2 tankers exactly alike except for the color, and they saved tens of thousands of dollars. So as we look back at the ladder truck purchase, when we're talking about 1.3, if we were to look at something like that to buy two, and they were identical, perhaps maybe the colors differently, there would be a savings there. Staffing is always a big thing, whether it's volunteer call, per diem, or administration. Doesn't always need to be dollar for dollar, but those are things that we're looking at. Dispatching is another one. Kennebunk currently is dispatched by Sanford Communications, and Kennebunk Port is dispatched by their own dispatch system, and their PSAP is, I believe, York. So in the future, that may be something that would be beneficial if these two towns work together. The bump in the road rate at the moment is that we operate on 450 megahertz and they operate on 150 megs. So they're VHF and we're UHF, but that's just a small thing. We both have those radios in our vehicles at the time being, but we don't have the number of portable radios that we could work together with them. We took those 14 items and we handed them out to the task force members and we asked them to prioritize that list. And we awarded points for each position on each individual's list, and then we put that all together, and Chief Everett from the port compiled that list, and that's what we're talking about now. And we've started at the top with those, and we're working down through at 4 at a time at a meeting to try to get to the bottom to see if those are truly the order in which we'd like to pursue. This is just, a few of the things that's going on. We're not at a point to come forward with a recommendation at this time. It's a can of worms, and we've opened it up, and there's a lot of nice worms in there, but we need to look at all that stuff because it all equates to money, whether it's saving or spending. And the committee wants to bring forward something that's actually meaningful to both communities. So, any questions?
Thank you, Chief. Questions? So, Chief, I know that we send our fire apparatus, some of it, to Scarborough for maintenance, and the idea would be that we would forego doing that if we had our own shared mechanic.
That could be. I mean, we originally start with the Public Services Department and have them look at and evaluate the trucks. And if it's time sensitive, they can get to it. If it's something that's beyond their abilities, that's where we have Scarborough come in and help us. And we always have a third and a fourth where we send them to specialized companies that work on either the pump or the ladder or something like that. But yeah, that could conceivably be a person that keeps those trucks in the ready at all times and works just on fire trucks. And there is a national certification for a fire apparatus mechanic, and that would be probably one of the first steps.
Okay. And in my business, wireless microphones, UHF is better than VHF. Is that the same?
I think you could find someone to argue either point.
Very good. Okay, any other questions?
I just have one, Blake.
Courtney, please.
So what is the timeline like, Chief, like in terms of when some of the lower hanging fruit stuff that maybe is obtainable, what is the next timeline looking like to hear from you or Justin again?
Well, I think it's ongoing. It's open-ended right now. I think that we're not at a point where we can come forward with a recommendation. Some of the stuff, we're doing some of it, and we just need to polish it up, like the officer training. We're doing the firefighter training. It might be very easy to fold into the officer training stuff like that. But we told the board that we'd come back every once in a while and give a report so that, one, it keeps our feet to the fire, no pun intended, but we keep moving forward, because some of that stuff, if you're not forced to come and make the presentation, then it just goes by the wayside.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions from the public? Okay, there's no action to be taken. Mike, did you want to add anything?
Only that I appreciate the efforts, and I know Chief Everett will be updating his select board as well. And my hope is that maybe at some point some representation from both boards will come together to hear kind of mutually some of the initiatives to make sure that there's collaboration between the leadership in both communities so that this task force will be able to know how far to advance.
Yeah, no, one of the talking points that started this was a discussion about a ladder truck, particularly because Kennebunk needs one and Kennebunk Port's starting to look at one. It's a $1.3 million venture. since the task force was approved, ISO, which is the Insurance Services Office, came to both communities, which rates our fire insurance for mostly commercial entities, but it does have a small effect on residential fire insurance. And their rating schedule is kind of leaning against that, because their schedule says that a ladder truck should be within 2.5 miles of the areas that it's needed. So if you look at where our ladder is kept now here at Central Station, we more than adequately handle that 2.5 miles. So if it were, the ladder would be at the North Street Station, that would put us a little bit outside of that. But we're still talking about that, but those are some of the things. Another one along that line is, could a department buy the ladder truck fully, and then another department staff it? So those are some of the creative outside of the box type of thoughts that we're talking about. You know, we talked about saving money, but in kind is money as well. So anyway, the biggest thing is the ability for a community to dissolve this agreement should we go into it deeper. We need an amicable way out, because if one community or two communities spent, say, $650,000 apiece on a ladder truck, and somebody's not happy and they have to give 2 years to get out, it takes over a year just to build it, and then the budget system is another year. So, you know, those things we have to look at very deep in order to make a good decision for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, item 9, old business. We don't have anything under that category. Item 10, new business. Item A, hear an update from the Connectivity Task Force on Wireless Communications. Recognizing that areas of the town of Kennebunk are impacted by poor cell service coverage, the town's Connectivity Task Force, a subgroup of the Economic Development Committee, has undertaken an in-depth, extensive analysis of the current cell service in the community. Steve Sawyer will be present to update the board on his effort. His presentation is planned for approximately 2 hours and 20 minutes. All right, yeah, I am full of it. Steve, welcome.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. As Blake said, this topic started over a year ago, I think, or at least I got involved a year ago. And really with the idea that, interestingly, as an economic development committee, if you're trying to promote the town to people from away, and unfortunately you can't make a cell service call on Main Street, it's kind of a tough sell. So that was kind of how we got started. There was a lot of anecdotal evidence that would suggest that various parts of town, there were problems. Service wasn't as good and as robust as it should be. So we undertook, as you saw, if you had a chance to read the report, we did our own studies to get some facts, which turned out to be quite useful to us in conversations that we've subsequently had with cell carriers. So there's some interesting information in the back of that report that we produced. But I would like to recognize June Houston, who's the chairman of our committee, is here tonight, as well as Kristen Babcock. Kristen and I worked closely on the production of this report. Also, Eric Vandekay, who lives on Summer Street, was a participant as well. So we were the primary authors, but we did do a lot of outreach within the community, be it staff or police, fire. Also turned out to be a participant in this conversation, which we'll get to in a minute. I've got about 10 slides here to talk through this. I understand that we have limited time, so I'm not going to go too far. I'll go through it quickly, assuming that maybe you have questions based on the report that we produced. But we'll just hit some highlights here, and let me see if I can get this correctly. Awesome. Okay. All right, good. All right. First of all, let me say, and is it possible, maybe we can't dim the lights? Or can we? I don't know whether you're going to be able to read this or not. Perfect. Okay. The yellow outline is obviously the town boundaries. What you're seeing here are the public service and public safety broadcast locations within town. They're represented by circles which are a 1.5 mile radius. There's nothing significant about that. It's just an indicator. The center of the circle is where the broadcast location is, and I'll show you that in a minute. So we have pretty much through the center of the town, you're going to see, far western community is outside of the outermost circle. Parts of the beach are a little outside there, and that translates to service not being what we would hope. If we look at the cell tower locations or the cell service locations, those are shown with these particular circles, and again, parts of West Kennebunk are not covered real well, and again, parts of the beaches have some issues, as well as in between Main Street and the beaches or Heath Road. If you've ever been and know anybody who lives on Heath Road, they don't have very good cell service at all. So those are just kind of where the broadcast locations are in town. Here's, I think the next slide shows you just some examples, or I'll run through real quickly what the actual towers are if you just didn't recognize. I'm sure you're all familiar with the tower, the AT&T tower that's out by the Turnpike. This is what's called the flagpole down in Lower Village. There's one broadcast. This one here has a slew of antennas on it from all the major carriers. This one here has AT&T only on it. This is the old cable TV station off in Forest Hill Lane, also in Lower Village. And there are a couple of cell carriers on that tower, US Cellular and Sprint, which is now T-Mobile. This is the water tank on Hillcrest Lane. Interestingly, there is a US Cellular antenna, and there's also a Sprint antenna at the top of that, as well as a slew of public safety and public works, as well as water district communication antenna, all at the same elevation, and that's somewhat problematic if you read into the report. Here is Town Hall. There's an antenna here. This was put up because Public Works, there was no more room on this tank here for Public Works, so in order for them to make their radio communications work, they ended up erecting an antenna on Town Hall. And if we move over to West Falmouth, I don't know why I keep saying that, West Kennebunk, this is this is a monopole tower that's out near the Blueberry Plains. It only has Sprint on the top. It's interesting because it's in somewhat of a good location for that part of town, but unfortunately there's not a lot of people that live out there. So I don't know the history behind why this was developed in the first place, but there is room for other carriers there. They just don't happen to be there at this point in time. And likely it's because there just aren't many people to serve, and so it hasn't risen to the top in terms of priority. This is the West Kennebunk Fire Station. There's an antenna there. And this is the West Kennebunk water tank, which again also has some broadcast equipment at the top of the tank. So that's kind of what we've got right now. When we started this project, we were talking about cell service pretty much exclusively. And as we got into this, we quickly realized that because of the co-location at a couple of locations in town, public safety, public works, those folks have communication equipment also in town. And so we had a conversation with them. They have some issues with their current setup. And so we've kind of rolled their needs into this as well. And where we ended up really is that indeed there's the ability, if we look at a master plan for the entire community, to co-locate public safety and public works equipment with cell equipment if it's properly arranged and the site is managed well, so there won't be interference, But that's a lot of the problems that we have now. We don't have good site management. So I think there's advantages that we can gain through this area of town departments as well as just residential and business cellular communications. And I might also say that cellular communications is used by public safety as well. Cellular strength, as I said, we did some strength tests. The best area where the strongest signal is out by the turnpike, as you might imagine. Main Street on, our downtown on Main Street. If you have US Cellular or T-Mobile, it's a little bit better because they're both on the Hillcrest Water Tower. But if you have AT&T or Verizon or Spectrum, it's not very good at all. Particularly, and we did our measurements outside. We didn't do them inside buildings. So once you get into buildings, it's actually more restricted. As I said, between Main Street and the beaches on Heath Road is pretty difficult to make a call. The beaches are somewhat spotty, even though Lower Village, AT&T has a tower there, and US Cellular is close by on the cable TV. But again, there's some issues that could be dealt with to make it better. And then when you get out in the western part of town, the cell strength is pretty deficient there as well. So where we came to, there's a lot of talk in the communication industry, and if you watch TV at all the ads are about 5G. That is where wireless communications that's the next advancement. We're all operating our cell phones predominantly on 4G at this point. The issue with 5G is that it has a higher broadcast frequency, which means it has a much lower reach or range of signal. So the devices have to be more closely spaced. That works well in a city where you can mount them on buildings or on telephone poles because literally they're a quarter mile or less in spacing. For a town like Kennebunk, that doesn't make a lot of sense. There is some 5G devices down at the beach that have been put in. This Verizon put in some, and I think AT&T put in one last month. But those are isolated situations. So as a community, we're not in a position to go 5G. It makes more sense to stick with conventional towers because the broadcast range is about 2.5 miles around the tower as opposed to a few hundred feet. So you need less locations. I think 20 years ago or so when the towers started going up all over the place and cell service was coming into vogue, there was a concerted effort to minimize the number of towers. As you can see, we've got AT&T out by the turnpike, but in other areas it's a little bit more limited, and we've tried to piggyback on existing features like water tanks, which works. But unfortunately, without vertical separation, when you get more than one or two carriers and then other devices all at the same elevation, there's some interference, which is causing some problems. But the goal still should be, as a community, to minimize the number of towers that we have in town. And you would do that by co-locating various devices on a single tower. And we've sort of laid out a map for an ideal tower. We'll get into that in a little bit. The ultimate recommendations of the report suggest that really our top number one priority ought to be Main Street in terms of improving service for our downtown, for a variety of the existing businesses, new businesses, public works, town hall. Everybody would consider, I think, that Main Street is pretty important. We've got a couple of alternatives in the report, sites that seem to make some sense. In our opinion, the prime site is the Hillcrest Water Tower at the southern end of Main Street. The issue there, as described in the report, is that it's owned, obviously the land that it sits on is owned by the Water District. In conversations I've had with the Water District, they are interested, or they are doing some evaluation this summer on the demand that they have during their peak season, which is summer. They built a new tower up in Arundel. last year, and went into service this past year. So this summer is the test for them. If they don't need, if they can service their users adequately without using the Hillcrest tank, they're going to take that out of service. It's a very old tank. It's an 1800s tank. There's problems with it. So they'd very much like to discontinue using it. If they do, then our suggestion is that we have a conversation with them right quick and try to figure out how we just decommission it and maybe convert that site to a tower site of some sort. But that would be an ideal location geographically. It could accommodate both public safety equipment as well as cellular equipment. There's already 2 carriers on it, and we have a 3rd carrier that's indicated an interest in being there. So it's kind of a prime site. There's another site also on Main Street that seems to provide some opportunities. The problem or the issues, there are some issues with that from a zoning perspective, and also the fact that there isn't anybody there yet. So you'd have to, if we would decided to move forward with a tower there, we'd have to entice somebody to come and put their equipment on it. And then if either of those 2 sites, for whatever reason, don't work, we've been down at the Public Works site off of Sea Road, and indeed, there's enough land that exists there where it would be feasible to construct a tower. It's not as close to Main Street. You're about a mile away, so the service wouldn't be upgraded as greatly on Main Street if we went there. But it still may make some sense, viable and worth considering as we move forward. The other thing that makes some sense is that down at the beach, as I said, there's this flagpole that's in the Marketplace Shopping Center that has AT&T on it. If you're in that, right in the heart of Lower Village, you get pretty good service if you have AT&T, but it doesn't take too far to move away from that sort of Cooper's Corner area, and you lose your service fairly well. So I've talked to AT&T about going over and having a conversation with the owner of Forest Hill Lane, the old cable TV station. I have spoken to him. He has some interest in working with the town if we wanted to either reconfigure what was on his existing tower or build a second tower there. So those conversations I have not followed up with. I wanted to get some direction from you folks as to whether or not that made sense, but he's open to a conversation about that, with the idea of improving cellular coverage down along the entire beach area of the community. And then finally, as I showed you, the Weber Hill Road monopole out by the Blueberry Plains only has 1 carrier on it. There's no reason. The tower is owned by a company called American Tower. They're a big national company. They would lease space out to anybody who had an interest to go there. But I think the reason not more people have gone there is it's just there's not a lot of customer base out there to get people to go there. Which really brings me, in terms of closing remarks, to really leave you with a couple of thoughts. In terms of next steps, I think the zoning ordinance of the community we need to take a look at that. It was written at the time when towers were first being put up, so there's a lot of restrictions which some of the requirements may or may not make sense today. Some zones don't allow towers, and so we just need to do a comprehensive review of what our regulatory requirements are regarding towers to see if there needs to be any updated. I think it makes some sense to talk with Ken Thompson, who owns the old cable TV station with the tower down there in Lower Village, to see what might be possible there. As I said, this fall, we need to have a conversation with the Water District to talk about the future of that water tank, storage tank on Hillcrest Lane, and what we may be able to work out with those folks as it relates to improving service at that site. Keep open lines of communication with all the cell carriers, which we've established contacts with all of them, and I will tell you that T-Mobile has been very aggressive with us, as well as AT&T has probably been the most helpful and they've shown the most interest, and they do want to be on Main Street, which is good news for us, I think. And then we need to have a conversation internally about whether or not this is a business venture that the town wants to get into. And by that, I mean, if the town owned land, the town could lease the land to a tower company who would come in and build it and maintain it, and then they would sublease out to the carriers, or the town could go ahead and build the tower and get the revenues from any of the carriers that came on there to use the tower. So that's an issue that we ought to have just a conversation about. I've got my own opinions about that, but we'll leave that for a later date. So just in closing, I think it's it's interesting to note that while we may want to improve cell service on on Main Street, we have to appreciate and understand that we really don't have any leverage. The cell carriers are going to come if they want to come, if they think it's viable from a business perspective. We really don't. We don't have much in the way of controlling. So our strategy at this point has been to be helpful, to let them know that if they want to come, we'll do whatever we can do to facilitate their operation, because there is some regulatory hurdles that they will have to overcome. So keeping that in the back of our mind in terms of, we're a small town. They're spending their money in the bigger metropolitan areas. The more smaller communities, we're only, under 15,000 people, so we can't expect too much. But making the life simple is to our advantage. And the other thing that I think is important for you to consider too, as we move forward in this whole discussion, because it likely will be a public discussion if we decide to do something, take some action, is that really the understanding that 20 years ago when towers first went up, cell phones were a luxury. They weren't used by everybody. They were kind of a nice feature. Today, how many people do you know that still have a landline? Cell coverage is really essential now. So I think it puts a different spin on the importance of it from not only a business perspective, which was really our mission when we got started, but from a residential perspective. It's just part of our lives now, and not being able to make a cell call from your home with reliability, or calls being dropped or whatever, I think it's a different story now than it was a few years ago. So we're not asking for any decisions from you folks, but it would be helpful to have some direction. Like I say, there's a couple of things that we would like to do over the summer. Communicate with the fellow down at the beach, just to understand what he might be interested in doing if we were to move forward. And secondly, taking a look at our zoning regulations, and then being prepared in the fall to talk to the water district if they in fact want to decommission. So I'll take any questions. That's really the prepared remarks. If you have any questions, I'm
Thank you, Steve. That's spectacular. I would note that I've been on the connectivity task force for years, and we had many meetings where we were struggling and flailing to find our way, making very small incremental steps. And then when Steve came on board, he seized the project and has been really driving it forward at a much more acceptable pace. So Steve, thanks to you. I really appreciate you, your leadership. So questions from the board. Lisa.
That was great. Thank you very much. So I have a couple questions. Bear with me because my notes are very scribbly. So I guess my first question here is, if we put an antenna on the Public Works building, would that help the Heath Road area? It would, okay, so that's good.
it wouldn't necessarily on that site, not necessarily in that building, but that
Right,
general.
okay, yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so that's good.
Yep.
And then the decommissioning of the water tower, is that something where they want to sell the land and the town would purchase it, or?
Well, that's remains to be seen. I've had a couple of conversations with the superintendent. We've not talked to the trustees. He hasn't either. But quite frankly, it's a revenue stream for them. Now they get, rental from the 2 cell carriers that are there and other people that have their equipment on the tank. So he didn't want to lose that stream. So I don't think his intention initially was to sell the property.
Okay.
But merely, the last conversation I had with him was that he was thinking it would be great to either take the tank down or figure out some way to build a new tower there, but on leasing the land to a tower company.
Okay, I
who would
like
come in
that.
and do it.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, this is kind of a broad question, but what do other small towns do? What kind of service do they have? Like, I don't know, just like Freeport. They have a huge, downtown area, lots of businesses. Do cell carriers, have they come in there because they see the potential? Or, I know you don't know off top of your head, but any ideas?
It's kind of hard. No, I think just supposition, the Turnpike was the main corridor where everybody built initially. But if you drive, I used to work in South Portland, and if I started a call here when I got on the Turnpike here, I would go through a dead spot in Biddeford and it would drop, and then I have to pick up again.
Yeah.
So even the Turnpike isn't robust everywhere. So I think each town suffers with its own issues. York is an interesting one in that they've struggled for a number of years trying to. The latest was AT&T is trying to put an antenna on a water tank, and they're getting sued. It's like, so it's, there's no standard, I don't think. Each town is,
Gotcha.
unfortunately, each town is different. And I did not do that research. So
Okay.
I
And then I guess my last sort of thought is I think about these areas like the beach. So I have no cell service at the beach, none whatsoever. So I think about the safety aspect of it. If something happened to my kid and I needed to call 911, there's no way I could. I commute to Alfred. It's not a huge commute, but it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And what if there was an accident or something? I have no reception out there. So
Oh, absolutely right.
so
You're
that's I
absolutely
guess
right.
my
Yeah.
concern. So I would like to definitely see that improved. So I'm glad
Absolutely.
you guys are tackling this.
Yep.
All right.
Great.
Thank you.
We'll
Thank you,
look back.
Lisa. Anyone else? Sally?
So is it true that we're a little bit at the mercy of the cell carriers wanting to come in and put their carrier on a tower? Is that correct? So could we be in the situation where we build or create something and we can't get anyone to come in? Yeah, okay.
Well, and I'll give you an exact, that's the risk. And I'm not sure that we're in that. So if we go to a site that has nothing on it and we build a tower, there's no guarantee that anybody's going to come. And the classic example of that is the Water District. Because of all the antennas that are on the Hillcrest tank and over in the West Kennebunk tank, when they went and built their new tank in Arundel, they designed it to accommodate antennas, cell antennas, and nobody's come. No, not that that was a huge deal, but it just speaks to the fact that it's very hard to get the cell carriers to commit to coming before you build. The tower guys have figured that out, and they have ongoing relationships. And the folks that I dealt with have a relationship with AT&T, and we've sort of figured out that AT&T, because they've come, it's interesting. Their president of Northeast Operations, which is Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, lives in Gorham. Very, very nice fellow. After I first called him, he came down here and he sat outside of Duffy's and he tried to make a call and he couldn't make a call. So he wasn't really believing me that it wasn't really good service on Main Street, but he did come and he went, we need to do something about this. But they have their budgetary process as the town does. And so if they come, it's going to be in 2023 or maybe even as far out as 2024. But they're committed to coming to somewhere on Route 1. Is where they'd
So
like to be.
they don't make any money putting something on a tower? Is that, so there's just no, what is their reward?
People
More-
provide, having their phones.
Potentially, people will say, oh, AT&T is awesome here.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
yes.
it will cost them up front to put something on the tower. Okay.
Yep, exactly. And then they pay rent to if they don't own the tower. And the cell people don't own towers anymore. AT&T built the one out by the Turnpike, and they still own that. But they don't own most of the towers. That was an old model. Now there are private tower companies that own the towers, and they lease them out to the cell carriers. So there's a revenue stream. It's actually a profitable business, but it is a risky business if if you're not in it in a big way. So
Anyone else? Courtney?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you. Obviously, I'm on EDC, so I've heard this update, every few weeks, and great work and diligence in the process, and just wanted to thank you.
are you fine with me continuing to go forward? I kind of feel like I don't represent the town. I can't speak for the town, but in terms of just having some conversations with people to bring information back to you folks, is that okay? Are
Yeah,
you
I think,
comfortable with that? Or-
Steve, as long as you don't sign a contract.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
But I
Don't worry.
think, the key is you have the knowledge. There's no
Yep.
way, any of us could speak to it. So I think, yeah, as long as you don't
Okay.
sign, I'm
Yeah.
okay with you continuing
Well,
these
I'll give you
paths.
back, I'll give you a report later this summer then with
Yeah.
where we are for an update.
Any of these objective,
Is that right? Really? Your name? Is that, I'll put your name down.
the next steps that you had up there, Steve, is
Yeah.
there any of that we could be making an approach on that would help you? Is there anything that would having the town reach out to these carriers directly? I don't know if that's been happening in your subgroup, but if the town was actually the one representing it, do you think it would have any?
When we get to the point of talking about a specific site, it may make some sense. And I'll invite them to come, they will want to come here and talk with you about it too, as well.
Mike?
But I don't know that
Steve, do you, if I understand correctly, probably that September, October timeframe might be a good time for us to start discussions with the water district to
Absolutely.
determine whether they may decommission. And I think that'll be a really opportune time for us to see if there can be a collaborative partnership in that, depending upon what their course of action might be. But if they decommission that tower, water tower, there may be some real opportunity, and we know that might be a real prime service area.
Well, it works well both from a public safety point of view, and we didn't get into the details about their equipment, but their equipment has a greater broadcast range. It's like 5 miles radius. So if you put them up at the right height at that location, they could cover the entire town with some of their equipment. And it's not high enough now, and there's interference, so they don't get that. So they have a repeater over in West K, and they have a repeater down in the lower village. So that all works, but it's also it's a beautiful spot in terms of getting out to the Turnpike, getting down to Heath Road. So it would overlap with something down at the beach as well. So you would kind of blanket everything, from the Turnpike all the way to the beach.
So if I could add 3 comments here. The genesis of this project came from the CDAP, the Strategic Economic Development Action Plan, which was written a number of years ago, sponsored by the board and done through the EDC. The EDC took it off the shelf, dusted it off, and made a couple of recommendations on projects that we should work on. And so this, in my view, is an example of how committees can take the workload off of the town staff, because Steve has been doing yeoman's work in terms of moving this project forward without putting a tremendous burden on the town staff. And so that's the kind of committee participation that I think is very useful. The second issue, in answer to why cell phone companies don't pay attention to Kennebunk, is that we did when I first started on the EDC, I got a demographic map, which I was used to doing from my days as a developer of shopping centers. And what it does is it measures population in a 1, 3, and in this case, a 7-mile radius around a specific geographic location. I chose 30 Main Street, which is where Tibbetts Plaza is. And in a 7-mile radius of that location, there's barely 28,000 people. And so if you're a cell phone company, there isn't a lot of bang for the buck, you know, and so we're going to, unfortunately, be left with whatever they're willing to do unless good people like Steve or others begin to remonstrate with them and actually demonstrate that there is a need. And then finally, I would just say that we all know that if you're on a long-winded cell phone call, that all you need to do is head to Duffy's and it drops so that you can pretend that you're, you know, that you lost the call. And we will trade that off against better cell service all day long. Because, of course, the reason the EDC is doing this is how can you sell economic development in a community where you can't make a cell phone call? What company would come here? So, public, anyone? Go, June, welcome.
I just wanted to reiterate the fact about the public safety concern. We have to remember that we're a seasonal community and that there's a large amount of people that are coming depending solely on their cell phones. They're staying at Airbnbs, and I mean, I think that we're gonna have to make this attractive and present a package to the cell phone carriers because there's a lot of, they're at risk. The police officers are losing cell phone calls. We can couple that with the antennas. They have drop calls and poor cell phone service, radio service. So I just want to, we're angling in on the economic aspect of things and supporting our businesses, but that is a huge part of this whole endeavor. Thank you.
Very good point, June. And just thinking outside the 9 dots here, you know, if the town were to construct the towers, then we would have the ability to incent cell phone companies to come because we would be controlling the price of the rental, the monthly rental. You know, so we'd either cut it below competitor towers or say it's free, just as a way of protecting the health, safety, and welfare of our community. Right?
Exactly. With the green light here, I'm sure we'll explore further if we were to invest in the infrastructure, how that would look for us, what the maintenance required would be, and the cost impact of that, so that you'll have options. Whether we just try to get another company in to build the infrastructure and run it as an independent business, or whether you want to, as a municipality, take your own action steps and go that route.
Thank you.
Mike,
Thank
a
you,
quick
June.
question. Do we as a town have a contract with any self-provider for?
The only thing I would say we'd have would be and Joel, you can help with this, but we have air cards in all of our mobile data terminals, and so those rely on cell service, and so I believe we're probably in some contractual obligations with air cards and some of our cell service as well. But as far as anything else, I'm not familiar. Joel? No? Okay.
So I'm wondering if this conversation continues, like what we've been talking about on the EDC, connecting with each of the businesses, if there'd be any way to possibly pitch to a specific cell carrier as a town and almost, I don't know if the advantage would be there or not, you guys would know, but get into some type of contractual agreement. You know, it seems like AT&T is stepping up the most. You asked Sally, like, what the advantage is. Just do one quick search, and there's a conversation every day of, I'm switching carriers, who do I go to? And someone always answers with a different carrier because depending on where they are, they might do better with Verizon in West K or, whatever it might be. I just wonder, though, if we could just explore that option of, probably long after you're gone, we'll talk
I'll be
about
nearby. I'll be
cell
nearby.
carrier.
Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't we hear about $250,000 to construct just an under 200-foot tall tower if we wanted to take that on? Am I right on that number? Times 2 then, 250 times 2, that's what I meant. But if we wanted to do something like that in the future for us to own. Okay. Joel, did you have anything? He's got all the numbers in his head.
No. Our arrangements are with Verizon and AT&T, and that's because of public safety. FirstNet for AT&T, and then Verizon because of our connection with public safety with the police. So we're pretty locked in with those two.
That's another point of conversation possibly with Arundel and Kennebunk Port. Like looking at that map, some of the stuff down by the beach, you probably could, get them to commit as well and see if there's a way to maybe add that to Chief Rowe's list.
Well, it's funny when Steve mentioned that there were no takers on the new water tower. I wondered whether those were already carriers that were at the Weirs site on that tower. I don't know, but I'm wondering if there may be just an overload in
close,
that
yeah.
area.
So I would say that, the green light for sure, but maybe exploring some of those opportunities too to see if, like what Kennebunk Port and even maybe Sanford, like with the airport, West K, I know that right now, previously, a lot of these cell carriers weren't maybe looking at West K, but look at the development that's happening out there now. Just as a thought, that's where the land is left, so that's kind of where things are moving. And even for Sanford in that regional area, you're going to have tall pines going up in Wells, which comes right off of Route 9, is it? And so I think in that triangle radius, there might be an opportunity, and if it is in the Blueberry Plains region, you're going to hit some of the, far end of Fletcher Street and come into the Elwive Road area, if it's still that 2.5-mile radius. So maybe that would be the next step in the meantime, because what do we do until we know about the water tower or having that conversation?
The issue, literally, to get on their radar at all, it's a stretch to get Main Street. So when I start talking about West K, that's way down the list. So I think it should be on our list, but I think it's not our highest priority, unfortunately. So we need to continue to have some conversations, but just realize that likely it's going to drag on, because they're going to go, oh, well, maybe in 5 or 10 years we could think about that, but,
Right.
But it's not going to happen in the next 2 years.
Well, and maybe even a conversation with one of the larger businesses that is already in town. Like, we haven't approached Corning, have we? Maybe they, what's their situation like? What's their need? Do they have a space? Hannaford, who knows? Something that's in one of these locations, just throwing it out there. Shields Meats, I don't know. But, I think maybe some more partner conversation at that point, because obviously everything you've looked at is in a really good place, but maybe one of these larger entities would be willing to look at that as well if the town isn't going to, or faster, or who knows.
As a site?
Yeah,
Is
as a
that what you're
site,
talking about?
right.
Oh, gotcha, okay. Yeah.
Maybe they'd be willing to take the, we don't know, but that's all I could think of otherwise that we could do in the meantime.
So if we look at those sites, then we'd have to look at the ordinances probably. That's where that piece comes in.
And we talked briefly about that, and it may be the simplest thing to do might be go a contract zone, because we're not going to do 10 sites, so we don't necessarily need to revamp every particular zoning district in town to allow towers. So we might pick and choose. That might be an avenue that may make some sense. We haven't really dug into it, but that was part of the conversation, was just look at them as isolated situations and try to see if we could work in that direction. Our thinking timeline is that literally because the water
You need to
district
get
is-
closer to the mic, Steve. Nobody can
I'm
hear
sorry.
you. Yeah.
The timeline might be the water district is in the fall, early fall, late summer, early fall. And then if that made some sense, then we would try to advance that first. And then there still would be some zoning requirements which might take us through the winter, so that because we know we would have to be on the ballot, and we would have to be on the ballot in June. And so then that puts you in June of 2023 with construction potentially in the fall of 2023, early 24 of having something real. That's probably as quick as we can do. We tried to be 6 months faster than that, but it's not going to happen. So that's kind of the overall game plan, I think, at this point.
So one of the things that the board needs to bear in mind is that getting a project approved includes convincing people in neighborhoods that they can live with proximity to a cell tower. We tried, and we turned down actually a cell tower that was proposed to be put up on Brown Street or off of Brown Street, literally in the middle of nowhere, and the pushback from the neighbors was considerable, and that was That was really out in the middle of nowhere. So anything that we think of course, we'll have to contemplate a public relations campaign with the neighborhood, and that's a difficult row to hoe. Okay, Steve. Thank you, everyone.
I just have one other question. Speaking to your point, Blake, is people's concern aesthetics or like brain waves or both?
Both. I mean, it's not in my backyard, you know,
Yeah.
and then there are the so-called bananas, build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything, you know, and those are people who just don't like building.
Okay.
So, you know, and it's not to disparage those folks, they have a point of view. I'm just saying that, you know, Steve could put together the greatest project on earth, and it would get pushback from the community. So we have to have a public relations campaign that goes along with it and make sure there's community outreach and that everyone's happy about what we're doing.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks
Steve.
again.
You're welcome.
Nice job, well done. All right, now I get to read a whole bunch of names. Item B, take up annual board reappointments. Town board committee and commission members up for reappointment have terms expiring on June 30, 2022. These are 3-year regular and 1-year alternate member positions. Below are the lists, and they're divided into those who wish to be reappointed, those who are not seeking reappointment, and those who should be moved up from alternate to regular member. Now, I suppose I could incorporate by reference the agenda here and forego reading of the names, but yes? Thank God. Is anyone?
want to say something.
Okay, but okay, just one sec here. So without objection, can we agree that the names that are contained in these 3 groups can be incorporated by reference, Jim, in our minutes so that I don't have to read them? Is that okay? I mean, I will read them. I practiced them all afternoon. Okay, so Sally, to you.
I have a very strong opposition to the great rollover as I see this. And I have that for a number of reasons. That people are given a 3-year term, and just like myself, if I choose to run again next year, you know, I have to get the petition out, I have to go through everything again. And I think that these are 3-year terms that if people are interested, they need to restart the paperwork and submit it. I think that we need to, especially for the binding committees, the ones that are quasi-judicial, legal, that we need to always be searching for the most qualified people to be on these committees. And of course, that entails that we need to inform the community that there are these openings and what our hopes are for quality, what their background is, and how much they could be a benefit to the town. And so that, of course, brings up our communication with the town, the newsletter. But it's very important that we're not continuing to just roll these positions over and over into eternity. These are not lifetime appointments. Nobody knows that there are 3 positions open, and I'm going to focus on the HPC because I'm the liaison. Nobody knows there's 3 appointments for that. That's a very important committee. They do amazing things, but they can cause a lot of duress. They can cause people a lot of money, and so this committee really needs to know their business. They need to do their due diligence, and we need to make sure that they are credible, that our committees are credible for what they're doing. And by just rolling things over like this, we're not allowing ourselves to find possibly the best candidates for the job. And so I really don't like this method.
Okay, anyone else?
I agree with a lot of what Sally said. I also know you work with the HPC, which people want to be on, and you have alternates. I've been working with the Energy Efficiency Committee, and we can barely get 3 people at a meeting. So I think there's a fine line. But you,
Absolutely. But I think that we need to advertise and let people know that there are these committees. And we don't do that right now. I mean, I know that things are posted, but they're obscure. You know, I think, Karen, you had mentioned the different places that the HPC thing is listed, and that's great, but people have to know to look into these spots, and it's not easy. It's not, it needs to be in your face, you know, that even the Energy Commission, and that, you know, that's something that's available. And people might say, you know, yeah, you know, I might want to do that. You know, we have in Kennebunk, we have the small circle of people that kind of are involved and know everything that's going on, but we have a much bigger circle that doesn't have a clue. I came from that bigger circle, and here I am. But we need to let the big circle know, you know, that this is what we have. And maybe it's more for the judicial, you know, the ones that are like the planning board, the budget board, the appeals board, the HPC, that have some legal powers to them. And maybe like the West Kennebunk Committee or things like that, maybe it's not quite as important. I don't know. But I definitely think, and I'm speaking definitely for the HPC, that you know, reaching out and seeing what's out there is just, it's vital. It's just, you know, we've dealt with issues over issues, and I just think that this will allow us to at least try to get the most talented people on the committee. And, you know, if nobody steps forward, and if people want to continue to be on that, and, you know, then maybe they be reelected.
right, yeah, we've
Yeah.
discussed that, you know, talking about term limits for these committees, and then if nobody steps up, then they can
Right.
reapply. And I think that definitely is a conversation maybe we need to have. I don't know what we're bound by legally, but I think that's a good,
Well,
a good point.
If it's a term, it's a term, you know, it's just like our term, you know, we're done. It's-
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
let me address that, because we have a statement of policy regarding appointments to boards, committees, and commissions. So we actually have a written policy that says, in pertinent part, item 8, if the board chooses not to reappoint a resident, he or she shall have the ability to request a meeting with the board to discuss the reasons for that decision. So in the past, we've heard a member of our community suggest that there is an expectation of reappointment, which always stuck in my craw somewhat, because this isn't a lifetime appointment, and yet this policy that was enacted before I was a member of the board, I believe, updated in 2020, but approved in 2013. So so I think for us to take any action of the sort that you're suggesting, Sally, we would have to bear in mind that we are obligated to have a conversation with the folks that we choose not to reappoint. It's just, yep, Courtney.
Yeah, I just want to hop in. So, you know, you make a great point about, I totally agree with you, Sally, that especially with some of these positions, I really think that we should be looking at, you know, who's qualified in today, right? Like, some of this stuff this is just the realities. Like, some of this stuff is just dated, and you need to like freshen up some of the things that committees are doing or not doing. And I don't mean that in a wrong way. I'm just saying that if you're just rolling over the same people all the time, I do agree with that. But on another perspective, which no one has mentioned, is 3 years is a long time. And 3 years, I think, is what actually deters a lot of people from even caring about where the list of committees is. I think that 3 years for some people is too much of a commitment. Some people want to dip their feet in, and we've seen what we've been able to do in a year, but how much we haven't been able to do in a year. So, you know, I think the typical thought process is, you know, 3 years for us to actually go through a couple budget cycles and make some change. But in a committee, you can jump in and kind of bring an idea right away to the first month and at least get some, you know, brainchilds going for that committee to carry with. I think personally that 3 years is too long for a committee term. That's just my opinion. I feel like we would have a lot more interest in people who, you know, maybe they know for the next year they have downtime, or like Chris Babcock, who just joined the EDC. He opted not to run for select board because he has another child on the way. This is too much of a commitment compared to the committee. So But even some of the committees, I know I'm putting in a lot of hours in EDC, like 20 a week sometimes. For some people, doing that for 3 years is like, I'm not even going to bother. Or if people from the public don't like the direction a committee's going, then maybe they're like, I'm not even going to bother getting involved with that. They don't align with what I could contribute, or the right direction that I feel like we should be going, or whatever it might be. I would suggest that we maybe take a look at changing the positions to all a year, maybe 2, but I would say a year. And some people might have an opposing opinion to that, but I do think we're in a point in this town where a lot of these names are familiar forever, and I appreciate everything that these people have contributed to this town. It is why it is what it is. That was a lot. But having that said, I've sat through a lot of Sally's meetings on HPC, for instance. Their job is unmatched. But to watch, like Karen, for instance, not really be able to contribute to a level that I feel like Karen is capable, and Sally sits through every HPC meeting and can't be acknowledged, what is the purpose of Karen or Sally until there needs to be a decision? It should be that it's collaborative. Right now, I don't feel that with some of the meetings I sit through. So I just sort of think that from a community perspective, I'd be interested to see if we advertised a little bit more, and if we changed the terms, if we could get some more people involved. Just my thought.
So, you're right, you're right, you're right. Paul, you're wrong. But the problem we have here is we still haven't addressed what committees are and what they are not. We have not come to a definitive statement of what our policy is in an overall sense for why committees exist. And just to refresh everyone's recollection, there are advisory committees and quasi-judicial committees. HPC is a quasi-judicial committee, and so they have a different set of rules that apply to them. The 3 reasons that have come to the fore in terms of why we have committees in town are, number 1, that they are workers, that they put their shoulder against the boulder and help every one of us push that down the road, that they take some of the burden off our town staff, much like we saw with Steve Sawyer tonight. Another theory is that they're think tanks, and then there's the third theory that they are policymakers. And we still haven't agreed on that. And until such time as we agree on what committees are and what they are not, and what our expectations as a board, I think we're down in the weeds, and we're starting at the wrong spot. I think we need to start with, why do we have committees, and then go down through the process to include things that you brought up. I mean, they're
Well, you make a good point. However, as time moves on, the HPC is still doing their thing and making their decisions. The planning board is okaying growth and development, or doing whatever it is that they're doing. So, and I'm really, focusing more on the HPC because that's the committee I know. I'm not trying to say anything about the planning board. These boards are great. They do a wonderful job. I just think that we need to realize that, in my opinion, that these are our 3-year terms, that we need to get the information out there to the community, what these committees do, and what we're looking for, that there's openings. People don't know there's any openings, and we're voting to we are creating a lifetime term. And I don't agree with that. And I see that, I don't think that every one of the committees is as urgent to make sure that we are staying on top of things, that we need to have a definition of what committees are, because we already know that the planning board is moving forward with things. The HPC is moving forward with things on a monthly basis, that we need to make sure that we have the most qualified people in those positions.
Yes, the HPC, the Site Review Committee, Board, I should say, the Planning Board, all of those, Zoning Board of Appeal, all of those have quasi-judicial status in our community. And so those are different from the advisory committees that we have created
Right.
for some reason that we seem to lose track of. And so there are really two distinct things here that we're trying to grapple with. Now, it would seem to me that if we go about a charter revision, one of the things that we probably should do is include committees in the language of the charter, because the committees are really not contemplated by the charter. But we do have this pesky little policy here that has been agreed to, and we would need to change that as well if we were to decline to reappoint people. So all that said, what's your pleasure? What would you like to do? Anyone have a motion or an idea of what the next step is?
I don't have a motion, but, so obviously everyone knows I've been working on committees, and I have taken a step back because as we move forward with a charter commission and a new town manager, I feel like we're putting the cart before the horse. I think that we need to see what the new town manager agrees to as far as that one, do you say a corner when it's a triangle?
Three-legged stool.
The one leg of the stool. And so seeing where that person fits on the stool, and then seeing what the Charter Commission comes up with. I think that, putting committees into the charter and having that discussion, I think, is important. And obviously, what the discussion we're having here at the Select Board. But, so my point is that while I agree with you, Sally, I also agree with Blake in that I think that we have to sort of start in the other direction.
The only problem I have with waiting is that when we get a new manager is going to be looking to us to answer questions, is going to need time to get their feet on the ground. So what we're doing is putting the kind of discombobbled mess of the committees further and further on the back burner. And and even the Charter Commission, that can take a year. So that's putting some issues that come to the forefront on a monthly basis with people unhappy with some of these, like the HPC, and it just puts everything on the back burner, I think, far too long. And I don't think a new manager is going to be tackling committees. I think they're going to try to get their feet on the ground with town hall, see how things work, and so.
Well, committees uniquely are our creation. They serve at our pleasure, and we create them, we support them, we are responsible for them. And so whoever the next town manager is not going to be wading into those murky waters.
Yeah, so
We've
why
had
don't we
enough.
wait? Yeah.
Well, so does anybody have an idea of what you want to do this evening?
What we could do.
Mike?
I don't have an idea. I just wanted to make sure that as you consider this, and this, I don't take a stance one way or the other, but if you were to not reappoint this evening, there are situations where there would be committees that would not be able to function because they would not have a number to have a quorum, and some of those may be your binding committees. And so I just would say, please move with caution. It may be something you want to explore soon, but I think to keep some of the committees functional, it would be important to try to reappoint as you seek other ways. And I would just encourage you to think about that.
So the only thing I struggle with on that is that if we move forward right now, which, again, it feels almost counterproductive because you're literally could push away an entire list of people who have served, who understand, and who want to continue serving. That is by no means the intention. However, what you're suggesting is that we essentially wait 3 years with some of the people who are maybe part of committees and possibly causing some dissatisfaction on the more, like you said, the binding groups, the quasi-judicial groups. Like, no offense, but I think of the gardening committee, I'm not concerned who's going to plant the roses. They look beautiful. They're always going to look beautiful. That is all taken care of. But when we're talking about how much development and how many buildings have been built in the last 2 years and where that's going, we're just going to roll over 3 people in a, we're talking about contract zoning tonight. We're talking about so many things that basically we're pulling all these people along with us, but maybe they don't even Maybe they're not even part of what that new vision looks like, if that makes sense. I'm talking totally off the cusp here, but I guess what I'm saying is when people come in front of this board and they tell us why they are a good fit for one of these committees, it's typically because they've done the research of what's happening in the town that is relevant to that certain issue. The next 3 years looks a lot different than when they maybe came in front of us 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Are they still qualified for where the town is now and where we are going tomorrow?
Well-
That's my question.
We have, you know, if we had people lined up and pounding on the doors to serve on committees, that would be one thing.
But then the
we don't.
conversation of the 3
Hold on,
years.
Hold on. We can't not act tonight. I think this is an idea that suddenly, you know, came out of nowhere, and if we are to not appoint, then, as Mike pointed out, a lot of things are going to come to a shuddering halt. And I don't think that's in the best interest of the town. Now, if you want, I'm not sure of the legality of this, but we could reappoint for 1 year. But clearly, the burden is on us. You know, we have been tactical for far too long on this subject, and we need to be strategic. We need to figure out what committees are and why they exist, what we expect of them, and by not reappointing people is not going to solve that problem. It's not going to help.
No, and that's not at all what I'm suggesting, Blake. And to be honest, like, to go through this list, it's not
Well,
at
then
all.
what are you suggesting? Can we have a plan here? Because
Yeah, I was just going to answer you.
Okay, good.
Yeah. There's no one on this list that I'm looking at right now and saying they're not specifically qualified for what they've been doing. That's not at all what I'm suggesting. What I'm saying is that I would absolutely reappoint the gardening committee for 3 more years. When you get down to the HPC line, I would love to have those people come in front of the current board. And I would love for them to tell us why they can get these historic buildings through the next 100 years and what their plan is to stay within the bounds of HPC and what their strategy is to work with our community development office to be an effective board and committee and work with, you know, Sally as their liaison to really educate the community, the people who are putting in the work as well and showing up. I'm not suggesting that, you know, for instance, a board that would be put out of commission, like, you know, we're acting as though we wouldn't be able to talk with these people within the next couple of weeks and make sure that they are, you know, still qualified for where these current committees are moving or what community development has happening. I guess all I'm saying, Blake, is that you are suggesting that we just reappoint 3 people and they don't have to go through, for 3 years, and they don't have to go through any process of being aligned at all with what the work is of today. That,
Okay, but
you're
what-
going through the process right now as the chair.
Yep, but so you say that we're going to interview them and test their qualifications. What do we know about the qualifications for any one of the boards?
Well, we don't, but what if some
That's
of
the
them don't
point.
even, right, but Blake, what if more people show up if you change the terms to 1 or 2 years? What if we just keep getting the same people because it's easy?
Then that's a different kettle of fish than what we're talking about tonight.
So my point is, I don't think
What
we
would
move
you like
forward
to
with,
do?
I don't think that we move forward with 3-year terms. I think it's too long. I
Okay,
think we,
I'm not sure that is, you know, legal.
so then, how would we know? We haven't talked about this until this moment, so.
Right.
You know,
but-
so
but-
I don't know
we-
what-
I don't think we should be doing this on the fly.
But you want
So-
us to vote for 3 more years on the
Well,
fly?
I'm willing to pull the whole thing. I mean, if you don't want to vote on this tonight, that's what I'm waiting to hear. I'm waiting for a motion. Is there a motion? Public wishes to be heard.
Howdy,
Hi.
Ms. Babcock. Having been on the committee for a little while and on the task force, I don't really think that the problem, like I think Sally makes a great point, is that it's a committee or it's a task force or it's a team. I think it's a problem of participation in government. And really, how do you, as the select board, encourage people and enable people to participate in the committees? And I'll speak as someone who works a full-time job, has kids, has other things going on, and other people who came onto the task force briefly that I was working on, I think are in a similar boat. And, you know, it's hard even to make that commitment to the task force or the committee. And part of that is, you know, I can do a Zoom call at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. at night, but these committees, these task forces aren't necessarily furnished with Zoom accounts or laptops or anything like that. So a suggestion might be to, how do you, as the select board or the town, enable committees, which I think are encouraged by the town to get work done, to do their work and attract more people? And I think, frankly, it's a little bit just difficult to participate in unless you know, don't have a full-time job, don't have kids, actively in school and stuff like that. So that might be a better place to start, asking the questions. And I think it's a valid call out, Courtney, that, you know, why are we just rolling people over for 3 years? And another point, 3-year term is a long time. I don't know where I'm going to be in 3 years, you know, like hopefully here, but it's a big commitment. And also, you kind of look at the legalese of signing up for the committee, the formal committees, and being like, well, I have to be at 75% of the meetings or I'm going to be kicked off. That's kind of intimidating, especially when we don't meet virtually ever, you know, or anything like that. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Christian. So Courtney, I'm not disputing anything anybody's said here, but the point is that there are a number of boards that would literally not have a quorum. So if you don't want to reappoint for 3 years, then my recommendation is that we postpone this for this evening, get some legal advice on what we can and can't do, and then bring it back for the 24th.
So if we bring it back for the 24th, we still have plenty of time because their term doesn't end until June 30th.
Correct.
Right? So we have 1 week to discuss this. And, I mean, honestly, what's...
28th, sorry.
28th, okay.
I never get the calendar right, yeah.
And honestly, from my perspective, like, I've been really lucky on the committee that I serve, you know, as liaison. I'm very satisfied with everyone on my committee, but again, you know how many people come into your place of work and talk to you about things. We obviously all communicate individually about how our individual days are or meetings or whatever. I attend virtually a lot of the meetings that are taking place, and I guess I just feel like there's this general thought of shake things up, like, you know, keep the progress going, and people want to be involved, and how can I, whatever. We need new ideas, we need this. I'm not suggesting that everything needs to change, because you don't fix something that's broken, right? However, we are literally have spent a year talking about committees and talking about, you know, some of the things that need to change within them. We are losing our town manager. You know, there's a lot of shift happening, and I just sort of feel like rolling people into that. They don't know what they're signing up for, and equally, I just don't know that we know at this point what we are getting.
Well,
That's
I
all.
think that's the point,
Yeah.
is, you know, committees are broken. Committees have been broken. Committees have, you know, habitually been a raspberry seed in our wisdom tooth as a board for at least as long as I've been on the board, and we have not yet solved that problem. I understand that we don't want to reappoint people tonight, so what I would suggest is that we pull this from this evening's agenda and revisit it 2 weeks from tonight. How does that sound? So that's my motion, that we forego the reappointments and step up to the podium, sir. Welcome.
My name is Steve DL. I serve on the HPC, although
I'm sorry, Steve.
DL. It's spelled D-A-L-Z-E-L-L. Jim knows well. It's really not the HPC that I want to speak about. The first thing I want to say, I think is being really overridden here, not taken account of, is that most of the people on these committees, certainly the HPC, are volunteers. They don't have to be there. If you push, they will leave and you won't have the committee. Certainly I feel like that. If I'm going to be just, oh, well, you've done your thing, go away. That's not what I want to be as a volunteer. So don't forget that we're volunteers, we can walk, and then you don't have the committee. Secondly, these are big commitments as they stand now. We meet twice a month. Other committees may meet less than that. Some of the meetings go on for 5-6 hours, starting at 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the evening. That's a big commitment. Don't denigrate the people who are taking those commitments. Don't think that they're not serious about what they do, because I think that's very unfair to the people on all the committees. I'm not speaking for the HPC. I think if you have liaisons who feel that they, which you all are, who feel that they can't actually liaise, that raises a question not about the committees, but about the structure of the liaison. That's not the committee's problem.
No.
That's a town problem. Those are really the 2 points that I wanted to make. The other thing is, just bear this in mind, you get to the 28th, you have 2 days before the committee members are out. How the heck are you going to reappoint people, get new volunteers in that period? The timing is very dubious. I think you need to go through this process a couple of months before the end of the terms, because otherwise you're going to finish up with nobody on the committees.
Couldn't agree with you more. So if we do this, if we pull this agenda item, then there are going to be committees that will be non-functional, and they'll be non-functional until we figure out how we're going to deal with this. So does anybody want to I'll make the motion. The motion is to withdraw this agenda item from this evening, postpone it to the 28th, which, as the gentleman just stated, will give us 2 days to figure out how to staff these committees. So the motion is to withdraw the agenda item. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I mean, there is further discussion, Blake, because I guess right now what I'm feeling is that this is thrown on us tonight to reappoint all these people. We're having a meaningful discussion about it, and the only solution we're coming up with is to reappoint everyone for 3 years, or feel obligated to reappoint everyone for 3 years, or we're going to be the reason that a committee member feels unwanted, which is by no means the message that we're trying to purvey, or that we're going to have committees shutting down. And all we're trying to do is make sure that everyone's on the same page and that everything's moving in the right direction. And to me, 3 years just seems unrealistic. And that's the only point I was trying to make. And I feel like both of my options, because I'm getting presented this tonight for the first time, are extremely limited. Is there no other thought or suggestion?
Well,
No, I'm asking from everyone.
That's what I've been asking.
I just wanted to say one thing. I do see there's someone in the audience who wants to say something, but I just wanted to say that these people are willing to serve 3 years. So I think that point about people aren't willing to serve 3 years, I think at this juncture is sort of moot. I understand what you're saying, though, as far as getting fresh ideas in and maybe having some terms that are only 1 year for maybe committees like the Energy Efficiency Committee, where it's hard to get people. Maybe a 1-year term would be great to get new people in. But what was my other thought? But anyway, so these people are willing to take 3 years. Oh, I remember now. And so I think that that's important to recognize, or the alternates who are doing 1-year terms. The other thing is that, as Blake has mentioned to me multiple times, municipal government is a slow process. And I think that as we look at these 3-year terms, next year we'll have new terms coming up, and maybe in the next year we can reevaluate it. But I think that at this juncture, we reappoint these people to their 3-year terms that they're willing to serve, and then in the next year, before next June, we reevaluate our system. That's my thoughts.
Thank you. The policy, I'm just reading again, the policy, thank you, Lisa. The policy says each appointment is for the length of the term and does not ensure a reappointment at the end of the term. Regular terms are for 3 years unless filling a vacancy. So the policy establishes the 3 years, and I don't think that we can change that policy tonight just by legislative fiat. I don't think that's a good idea. But I've made the motion, so hold on. Is there anybody else who would like to be heard?
There is a gentleman back
Yep.
Paul Bavacqua. I just have 2 points to make. I wanted to address, you just did, Blake. You mentioned the three-year term, the policy. Despite the policy, the zoning bylaw is also clear on that. The term cannot be changed without a change in the zoning bylaw. I think everyone needs to understand that.
Yep.
The second thing, and I could be incorrect on this, but I don't think I am, even though these appointments are being made now, and they're being made, or possibly being made now or in 2 weeks, and even though they are for three-year terms, all of the volunteer members on all of the binding boards anyway, to the best of my knowledge, serve at the pleasure of the select board. And if any of those members is either considered no longer qualified or simply someone more qualified is presenting themselves, the select board always has the opportunity to address that at any time. I believe any of us can be replaced at any time with due process. The same process that I believe is required by the policy for not reappointing. I think it's the same in both cases.
Paul, you're right, and not only that, the charter says, and I'll quote the charter here, item C, each appointment to any board or commission shall be for a 3-year period commencing July 1st of the year in which the initial appointment is made unless otherwise prescribed by statute. So at least insofar as the Board of Assessment and Review, Budget Board, Fair Hearing Board, Historic Preservation Commission, Planning Board, River Committee, Shellfish Committee, Site Plan Review Board, and Zoning Board of Appeals, we can't waive that. It's law. It's the charter.
Until the zoning board is changed, right? Or the charter
Right.
is
I mean,
changed.
those things are required by our charter. So really what we're talking about here is our advisory boards.
And I was going to point that out, that was my other thought, is that we do have to keep in mind that they are two separate groups. And you brought that up and reminded me. So I think that that is important to remember, that our quasi-judicial, thank you, are mandated under the charter and under some points state law in regards to Historic Preservation Commission. So I think that, yes, we're dealing with two very different groups of people and how they are governed, for lack of a better word. So thank you for
The
reminding me of that.
quasi-judicial boards, I believe, all take their
Right.
authority from the zoning board, from the zoning
From the charter,
act.
actually the charter.
From the charter,
Yep,
through the act,
Yep.
right, through the zoning act.
yep.
I just had a real quick question, Paul. If we in the future were to make some changes where as a committee member, your term was coming up to an end, instead of rolling over, if you just had to do like what we would have to do to reelect, if you had to resubmit an application into the town manager's office, would you be willing to do that? Would that be something that you would see? I mean, right now, things just roll over and you're just asked, would you like to do another 3 years? Would that be,
I don't have an opinion one way or the other on that right now.
Oh, okay.
Again, a lot depends on how the zoning act is written, whether or not a new application is even required. I think if an individual were possibly not to be, including myself, not to be reappointed, or told that he may not be reappointed, then I might resubmit an app, or I might just go off into the sunset. I really don't know which way.
you don't know? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Yes, who's next? Barbara, welcome.
Barbara Fleshman.
You can move that mic down. There's,
Little bit,
yeah, there you go.
Right now, I am the vice chair of the HPC, and I also served on the Comprehensive Planning and Zoning Board Committee, which I spent 5 years on. And one of the things that, it was a wonderful experience. One of the things I was able to actually get a lot of background on was all of the committees, because we had members from just about every committee in town on the Comprehensive Planning Committee at one point in time or another. And one of the things that we came up with was this kind of thing, wherein a lot of these policies really need to be updated. And the comprehensive plan, when we looked at things for each of like the areas, we talked about a whole aspect of historic and architectural aspects of the town. it's one of the major aspects of our town in terms of the culture, the atmosphere that the town actually has and what draws a lot of our tourists to this town. I think the board, one of the things that we have within our Article 12 for our policies is things like if you miss meetings. I mean, that kind of, if you are missing lots of meetings, does that show that there isn't the same kind of commitment that maybe everybody else might have? So there are things, I think, within our own regulations that also kind of get the committees to kind of keep track of who we have on the committees. We encourage things like additional training. I've gone through a lot of training through Augusta. I've gone to the National Association of Preservation Commission classes, especially since the pandemic, because we now have Zoom classes that you can take at any point in time. You don't have to go to Ohio or Oregon. So I think that being able to know who's on your committee and what their qualifications are very important. We have not done a good job of getting that kind of information out to the public and to town members, and we discussed that.
I know, and you had some
And I
great
raised that.
ideas.
And so one of the things that we wanted to do in our working group, we're trying to get a working group together to go over all of our policies. Things like a COA is only good for 6 months. It takes you 6 months to get a contractor. You know, those are the things that, again, have changed over time from the time we wrote a lot of these policies. And so what we were looking to add to that kind of a working group is having everyone write up a little paragraph. What are your qualifications and your desires for being on this committee? And that could even go on the websites for all of the different committees. So I'm not against people being qualified. It's just that, again, I think we need to go through the whole regulation of making this a policy change. So if the 3 people that we're looking at getting reappointed for another 3 years, if there is something found in terms of maybe qualifications, if the board, select board decides that someone isn't qualified, that can always be discussed. If there's something that said, well, you know, if you would do this, this, and this, maybe you would be more qualified. But I think, again, most of the volunteers that we have in this town are exceptional. And the fact that they're willing to devote this kind of time, I mean, comprehensive plan, I thought I was never going to be through with that. But it was such an incredible learning experience for being part of this town and helping to get us on the right track for the next 10 years. And the commission for the HPC has really looked at where are we going by keeping informed on what are the changes across the country when it comes to historic preservation. What are the things that are happening within Maine in terms of historic preservation? So I think that tonight, if you don't want to work on the reappointments or actually vote on the reappointment, I think, again, it might be a little bit, I guess, distracting for the people in terms of what they're going to be doing, of whether or not they would be coming back for that kind of term. So we'll see. Okay. Okay. Dear Karen, I understand that the Select Board has the reappointment of 2 members of the KHPC tonight, those being Barbara Fleshman and Steve DL on the agenda. I should like to affirm the values of these 2 members as contributing commission members. They are both They both are in constant attendance and always comment appropriately. Barbara, as vice chair, is innovative and investigative. She is always uncovering interesting articles from commissions all over America that pertain to our work here in our small town America. Steve, as alternate member, takes his role seriously, besides being an architect with a feeling for history. We are fortunate to have these two volunteers for our commission to serve so loyally. Sincerely, Francis Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Sally?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you know, when you and I chit-chatted on the phone, you have all these great ideas, and I applaud that, and I hope that those happen, because I think that they would be wonderful. They'd be a huge thing. I think, you know, sometimes it's the issue of people understanding, you know, and knowing all the things that you do.
outreach, right.
Exactly,
Yeah.
it's that outreach, yeah.
I brought a couple of things.
Oh, good.
I'd just like to,
Okay,
and then,
Thank you. That's awesome.
okay?
Yeah.
guys can look.
Okay, we'll
Thank
pass
you,
that
Barbara.
around. Thanks, Barbara.
appreciate it. Thank you.
And I just wanted to say that as far as attendance, it's my understanding that Kathy does vet that before, no?
I was
Okay.
tracked
Not
by
the
the
last
town
one.
clerk's office, and we suspended that for 2 years due to COVID, where many meetings were canceled. Many times people had to attend remotely. It was probably a best practice to cancel that. Certainly, we hope this year attendance will again come into play if we can return back to a level of normalcy.
Right, but in the past, it has been kept track of.
Yes.
And if you don't attend, you're not reappointed.
Okay, anyone else from the public? So I've made a motion out of courtesy to Sally and to Courtney. I'd rather that I would like to withdraw that, because I think we are treading into a legal area where we already have guidance not only from the charter but from an existing policy. And so we would have to grapple with that inconsistency with policy and with charter. But if everyone wants to take a vote on that, then by all means, what's your pleasure?
I certainly don't want to do that. I just, you know, this is just, it would be lovely to be able to revamp the process. And I think by revamping it, it also gives a lot of individual credibility to the members on each committee, and I just think it's an important thing to do. I do appreciate Lisa's thought of, you know, we're going to have a whole new batch of appointees for next year, and I think that we really need to do our due diligence and can't put the committee things on the back burner. This would be an important thing to rectify. And I don't think that we necessarily have to start with this lofty, like, what is the purpose of a committee? We need to, you know, pinpoint some glaring issues, which would be, I think, this step. And I think we need to really get the word out to people, whether it's through the post with a page or the newsletter that we're trying to work on, to let people know about the different committees and what openings are there and how to apply. I think that that's missing. But we can do that, and I am willing to go along with your suggestion. Because my purpose is not to, you know, offend or to cause complete disruption and collapse of the present system. It's that, you know, this was just a glaring thing, and I just don't agree with it. But I understand that it's a work in progress. How do you feel, Courtney?
You took the words out of my mouth. Yeah.
I'm so glad you guys care about me so much.
We do.
No, I echo what you're saying. I don't want anyone to feel by any means demeaned
No,
by,
it's not
by
the
the
purpose.
discussion. I think
Yeah.
that discussion is how you move forward. And again, there's not one name I could say that I'm like, well, that person's really doing terrible on that committee and making us look awful. We need to get them off. I'm not, you know, that's not at all. It's no individual. It's literally just the process. It's the idea that I know for me, committing to 3 years at 32 years old was a hard thing to fathom. Sally got the 2-year seat, so, you know, but you think about that, and I just think, do I know people who would want to be involved in some of these things that, like Chris said, there are some restrictions. I don't see our way of government ever converting to a hybrid model or online full-time. I just don't. It just won't happen. And so if people are going to commit to something, like, I know for me, I hate to overpromise and underdeliver. Like, I literally flew home today from Montana to sit at this meeting, and I'm leaving first thing in the morning for another meeting, and I could have flown directly to it. But I am committed to this town and to this board, so I wanted to be sitting at this seat. I know that not everyone's willing to do that, so, you know, they won't, and then people don't show up. So in 10 years, it's the same people. You know, who is getting educated from the great folks from HPC that just spoke? Who's my age that they are training? Who's getting encouraged that's my age, who's lived here my whole life and understands and appreciates all the things that you are keeping alive? And who's going to do that when they say, I'm done? Like, it's been a while. If we're not encouraging enough people and showing them that, you know, they have the potential to do that, like me, taking this risk, it's not just on this board, it's in these committees. And so that's kind of, I think, my point is just that it could literally just be forever until people physically either can't make it to a meeting anymore or say, like, can't deal with these young kids and leave, you know? That I think we could get ahead of is kind of all I was suggesting. But I'll move forward with whatever the board wants, and I appreciate every volunteer in this town more than I could express in words. So that's not, you know, my intention by any means to push anybody away.
And I, first of all, I do care deeply about your feelings, and if I have hurt your feelings, I apologize. Okay. Okay. Other nights. All right. And just so you know, Courtney, I couldn't agree with you more. This has always been a charade. You know, we go through this process every year, and you're not the first person who's made the observation that this is just sort of a pro forma rubber stamp operation. Even the appointment of people to boards feels that way sometimes, that we're not really seeking out candidates. And yet these are our neighbors, so we don't want to hurt their feelings. If they raise their hand and want to serve on a committee, almost invariably we say yes. Rarely have we ever tried to remove somebody. I think that happened once, and that created a great kerfuffle. I'm looking at Joel because he'll remember that. It blew the town up when somebody was not reappointed. And so this is a delicate subject. It's one that cries out for revamping. It needs to be overhauled, but it needs to be overhauled throughout. The whole process stinks, in my opinion. So I'm going to withdraw my motion, if you're okay with that, Courtney, and we will proceed to the business at hand, realizing that we are constrained somewhat in our actions because of the charter and because of the existing policy. And you know, I'll get you a copy of this. You know.
I'd like a copy.
Okay, we'll get copies of those to you.
So I will make a motion to reappoint the regular and alternate members noted above to a 3-year terms expiring on June 30, 2025, and 1-year terms expiring on June 30, 2023.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion is approved on a vote of 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent. Back to you, Courtney.
So I'd like to make a motion to send letters to the above-named committee members that did not wish to be reappointed, thanking them for their service to the town.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Did you get the second there, Jim?
I did.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Just one quick question.
Yes, please.
Because of what we just went through in this first year with committees and some issues, have we been in touch with these people and understood prior to them not wanting to roll over why they have chosen not to?
Kathy is in touch. I don't know whether they offered reasons or not.
Okay. I think that would be the only thing moving forward, that if we are going to correct our past mistake, it would be just checking in that people are simply too busy moving on because they're ready to, or that it's not something we did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Good point.
Back to you, Courtney.
Yes, so I already made the motion, Blake.
Is it a motion to reappoint
We didn't,
Renier?
you didn't all in favor us. You have to take the vote on number 2.
Oh, lovely. Didn't I do that?
No.
You said any further discussion, and I just made a point.
All those in favor? I thought I did that. Opposed? The motion is adopted, a vote of 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent. Back to you, Courtney.
And then I will make a motion to appoint Rainier Newkirk to a regular member position on the Kennebunk River Committee, Keith Hafer to a regular member position on the Site Plan Review Board, and John Seveny to a regular member position on the Zoning Board of Appeals, all with terms expiring on June 30, 2025.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is adopted on a vote of 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent. And see how I tricked you, Courtney, into reading those tough names?
How'd I do? I went to school with a Newkirk.
I know. I know you know these people better than I did. But I practiced. I have a phonetic spelling here of their names. All right, so we're moving on to item C, confirmation of the town manager's annual appointments. Below you will find the town manager's nominations for annual appointments for the period of July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2023. Confirmation from the board is required. That's set forth in Article 4 of our charter. Questions or comments from the, yes?
Yeah,
Courtney.
just one thing, Mike, you clarified for us in the email the other day about the acting town manager appointment. I fully understand your email. It makes complete sense. But I think there's still some misconception out there in the webs of the world.
Sure.
And for the record, can you please transparently tell the public
Be
that this is a
happy to.
normal process?
So my intent in this case, in nominating Joel Downs to be the acting town manager, is to have someone to act on my behalf in the case where I might be incapacitated, unreachable. If in the old days, as I said, you used to do international travel occasionally on vacation, and so not reachable. If I were under anesthesia, has been the case when one has surgery, I asked Joel to act in my stead in case something dramatic happens and we need to have a town manager decision. It is only a management practice. We're not creating a position. We certainly could go to the position of every time that I think I might not be available, which are very seldom, I could reach out and formally appoint, in this case, Joel. And I'll even share that my first year here was interesting. For many, many years, Joel had been appointed as the acting town manager. When I was lucky enough to have the position as town manager, I didn't know Joel. I didn't know his leadership and capabilities and management style. So I didn't appoint anyone. And I took it upon myself to determine and identify within the workforce, if I was going to be away, who I might appoint. As it turned out, I learned very quickly that he does have wonderful leadership skills and management skills. So ultimately, I would say, Joel, I'm leaving, and I may not be in good cell service. Would you please act on my behalf? Ultimately, then, after that, I then asked that Joel be appointed each time as the acting, and that's only in the case where, for some reason, my cell phone or whatever doesn't work. Other than that, I'm available.
And what's your only instruction to him before you leave?
Tell me.
Don't sell the town?
Oh, I do tell him that. Don't sell the town. And it's no different than, when the police chief is out of
Right.
town, he has someone act on his behalf. And, that's just good leadership, good management practice. And so
100%.
That's as transparent as I can be. We're only trying to be forward-thinking.
So it makes complete sense to me. I'm just trying to clear it up so that
I understand.
it's
and
on the record.
I can promise anyone listening, there is nothing nefarious. It is simply forward-thinking management.
So the follow-up of today's discussion, because I've been following the thread and not contributing, is that there's some thought process behind that we possibly wouldn't have a new town manager placed by November, and that then Joel would essentially be taking over in November.
Okay.
That
So
is
my
indeed not
commitment
true.
has been to this board, and I had submitted a date of on or about November 11th, I believe. And so I will not leave this town without a manager. I want this town to have a smooth transition. So that is absolutely not the intent, and that's why we've done it for now many, many years ahead of this. So I just assure everyone that that's not the intent.
100%, and thank you for saying that out
Absolutely.
loud.
Happy to say
Appreciate
it.
Thank you, Courtney. And yes, Chris?
Sorry, I don't mean to delay things further. Can I just ask a clarifying question? Thanks for the explanation. Sure. Is Joel compensated for appointment of acting town manager?
Joel's only had to serve in that role, I think, one time when I had a little surgical procedure, but if that's the case, no, he's not. He does it happily. Right, Joel? Thanks, Chris.
We actually dock his pay because his regular job is harder than Mike's. Just kidding. An anecdote. Many of you will remember Ethelyn Marthia. Do you remember her, Courtney? Ethelyn, who was our town clerk before Merton?
Yes,
Right.
I was 2. I'm kidding.
Well, this goes back to when I believe the bridge collapsed, when Barry was out of town. And so some of you were not here, the bridge on Summer Street that crosses the railroad tracks one night collapsed somewhat. One of our ambulances luckily was the first to discover it, and there was this big drop, and they of course reported it, and then reconstruction ensued. Because Barry was away, Ethelyn stepped in and served as the deputy town manager at the time. She stepped in and oversaw the initial response, and what I understand was that she put on her little orange vest and she went out and met with DOT and all the people that were. Now, is that a true story, or have I?
I wasn't part of the town at that point.
Okay.
I lived here, but yes, that's what I remember.
So anyway, that's an example of why we do this, and that goes back to at least 2003. So, anywho, I guess I'll read these, why not? Acting Town Manager Joel Downs, Finance Director, Tax Collector, Treasurer Joel Downs, Deputy Treasurer Chris Fogg, Deputy Tax Collectors Chris Fogg, Linda Lightbody, Jenny Casey, April Jones, Merton Brown, Katrina Boyer, Tabitha Barden, and Ian McGill, who just started recently, or will. General Assistance Administrators Michael Perdue, Karen Winton, Joel Downs, Chris Fogg, and Tabitha Barden. Town Clerk Merton Brown, Tax Assessor Dan, and also E911 Addressing Officer Daniel Robinson, Police Chief Robert McKenzie, Fire Rescue Chief Justin Cooper, newly minted, Director of Public Services Road Commissioner Brian LaVerriere, Parks and Recreation Director, vacant for the time being, Human Resources Director Jerry Sheldon, Director of Information Services Richard Boucher, Community Development Director and Town Engineer Christopher Ostreiter, Town Planner Brittany Howard, Code Enforcement Officers Brian Paul and Franklin Kunkel, and they also serve as building inspectors, plumbing inspectors, and our electrical inspector James Nichols. Alternate electrical inspectors William Clark and Mark LaMontagne. Harbor Master is Jamie Houts. Town Historian Kathy Ostrander-Roberts. Tree Warden is Wayne Cutting. And Constables Chris Russell and Michael Tucci. And we saw Chris Russell today in his constabulary uniform and badge. All right, to you, Courtney.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to confirm the town manager's nominations listed above for the 2022-2023 annual appointments.
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is adopted on a vote of 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Confirmation of the town manager's 3-year appointments. Below you will find the town manager's nomination for health officers for the period July 1, 2022 to June 30, 2025. Confirmation from the board is required. Our health officer is John Brady and Assistant Health Officer Brian Paul. And then you've been waiting a long time back there, Chief. There he is. Any questions from the public or from the board? To you, Courtney.
Make a motion to confirm the town manager's nominations listed above for 3-year appointments expiring June 30, 2025.
Second it.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is adopted on a vote of 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent. Item E. Approve the town manager job description. On June 7, 2022, the Select Board adopted the town's revised personnel policy employee handbook. On page 5, under section 3.4 entitled Job Descriptions, it is written, quote, The Select Board has final approval on all changes and revisions to the town manager's job description, period, end quote. In compliance with the requirements of the newly adopted Personnel Policy Employee Handbook, the town manager job description is provided for board approval. Comments?
So just one question, the description looks great. I just want to confirm, Jerry, this is just the description, not the posting, correct? And there would be different things that would be listed in the posting, right? I'm just making sure. The only reason is the one thing that, I intend to hopefully discuss with the agency is the location. Like, I like the fact that you live here, and I want our manager to live here. And when I don't see that in the description, I'm just assuming that would be part of the listing, because it would be like relocation or whatever.
Jerry?
Okay, so let me just really quickly talk about the job description and how we utilize it. So for a job posting, HR does look at the job description. So job descriptions are a living document which can be changed, and this living document can certainly be amended at any time by the Select Board vote and in collaboration sometimes with the employee. So SGR, when they place the ad, they've already asked for a copy of the job description, so we would provide that, and they would use it as one of several, probably, tools to compose the job ad. But the residency requirement is not currently in the job description, and I'm not sure, I can't speak to the charter, if there's not anything in the charter that says residency requirement.
So just clarifying then, when we go over details with SGR, am I right in saying then that we cannot require the town manager to reside here?
I don't know that that you can't do that. I think that's something that you would have discussion about with the SGR rep and determine whether that was an appropriate measure to take, or to require, as you think about, compensation and relocation and things like that. And I'm sure he in this case would be able to steer you that way.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? Public? Chris, you're holding down the fort. Anything? All right. So over to you, Courtney.
I will make a motion to approve the town manager job description as presented.
Second it.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is adopted on a vote of 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent. Item F, approve road closures for special events. The following event will require road closures per the police department. Saturday, August 6th, 2022, West Kennebunk Family Fun Day. Road closure needed. Alfred Road Parade Route needs to be closed from the intersection of Alfred and Alwive Roads to the intersection of Alfred Road and Patterson Drive. The roads will be closed from 10:55 a.m. until approximately 11:40 a.m. The above information may be subject to change. Any questions or comments? Courtney?
I will make a motion to approve the road closures for the West Kennebunk Family Fun Day as noted above.
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is adopted on vote of 5 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent. Any other board business? Does anyone wish to bring up new board business? All right, on to item 10, select board comments, subcommittee reports, and you and I can collaborate on this if you'd like, for the job search.
Oh, I was like, which part? Yeah,
I thought we mind melded, what is that?
it did.
Yeah.
I was actually just waiting to make Karen turn red. I'm so
Yeah.
excited. Go ahead, though.
So we had a kickoff meeting, telephonic meeting with Mark McDaniel of SGR. We met with him, I think it was was it Thursday?
Wednesday.
Wednesday. And you were in New Jersey.
Denver.
Denver. So we had him on the phone from Texas, and through the miracles of modern technology and Mike's expertise at using the conference function, we were able to get Courtney in from Denver, and we had a very good kickoff meeting. What we decided was that it was better to get Mark out here sooner rather than later, and in that regard, he will be visiting the town before the end of June, and specifically, Mike, I think it's 26, 27, 28?
He'll be arriving late the 26th, and he'll be on ground and meeting with people 27, 28, and he'll be at your board meeting on the 28th.
All right, so that's the good news. There's really no bad news that I can think of. Courtney, do you?
No, I was just gonna note that nothing changed after they had the final signing. He sounded the same. Everything it was a Tinder date sort of originally and went well. No, I mean, when we chatted with him again, I just sort of felt like the same, comfort level and commitment from him. I'm really excited for you guys all to meet him. And he's really looking forward to coming here. So that was about it.
Yes, please.
I will say that Jerry and I have frequently had correspondence via email with Mark. He is extremely responsive, so I have no doubt that he's very much in tune to this effort. And so we're working. Jerry is compiling a number of documents that SGR is, through Mark, has asked for, and we're making some appointment schedules to meet with, obviously, the board, division directors, and others. And so, but he's been very responsive.
And so I've been trying to provide the board with all of that correspondence, the signed contract and the like, to keep you apprised of where we are along the way. I think Mike's already reached out to everyone, or almost everyone.
I have, and so I'll send you out. You've confirmed certain appointment times, and so those will be coming to you.
So.
What's that?
He wants to sell his time.
Probably could get a bidder.
Well, we only accept cryptocurrency, so that's not going well, right? So the point of those appointments are 45 minutes in length. It'll give an opportunity for each one of us to spend time with Mark individually, and for him to get to know us and get our input. We also are making arrangements for him to meet the division directors, as well as trying to create a methodology for him to also communicate with the public. That's going to be a little more difficult given the time that he's going to be on the ground here for 2 days, but we are going to set up conference calls and the like, Zoom calls for the public to get in touch with him. So any questions or comments? Anything else, Courtney? I think we...
Yeah, no, that's it.
Okay, good. Any other subcommittee reports?
Yeah. So the housing workshop, Karen, she's very stressed. It has turned into a very eventful day. It's going to be June 29th. I promised everyone it would be before July 4th. So mark your calendars, public, June 29th. Give me the credit for your attendance because Karen needs her own 15 attendees. We are shooting for hopefully 50 people, I think is what are hoping. We each are responsible for 15 RSVPs, so you guys are with me.
We're your plus ones?
No, I think I'm already at about 20. But
Okay.
This is the part that stresses Karen out. The way that we have decided to confirm engagement is my brother is actually going to be cooking a barbecue at the end of the meeting. So we've had some great donations from local companies who have given us the meat and the buns and the condiments and the plates and the forks. And actually, this is Chris's responsibility because he said, why don't we have a barbecue? And I said, it's done. We're having a barbecue. And Karen, he was kidding, but I was like, we can definitely do this. And so I basically just the next day reached out to a couple of businesses and said, how committed are you to the housing crisis in Kennebunk? And a way for you to contribute to that would be to help people get engaged in the conversation. Would you be willing to contribute? Boom, done. So Karen's going to have a chef hat on, chef's kiss, medium well. But basically what's going to happen is, just like we discussed last time, we have a meeting tomorrow morning, actually, to kind of go over ourselves. This is one more meeting, and then we have one final one next week to practice presenting our 15-minute spiel. the way that we see this going down is it'll be at Waterhouse, very casual. I will be reviewing the short-term rentals. Chris will be reviewing ADUs and the opportunity there. And then Karen's going to be looking at attainable housing, affordable housing, workforce housing, whatever you wish to call it, and some opportunities there. But essentially what we've all gone through and done, and we discussed it last week, is 5 pros or cons or challenges to the community that maybe, it's so easy for someone to call us, or like, a nice woman I spoke to for an hour yesterday on Fletcher Street who's concerned about a new short-term rental, called her, talked to her for an hour, talked her off the bridge, everything was good, because she was not fully encapsulating the whole picture, just what was affecting her. And so something we've been focusing a lot on is, what are people not thinking about because it doesn't impact them, and how can we kind of, when we casually discuss these topics, how can we kind of put them in someone else's shoes who's either experiencing a bad neighbor with an STR, or is the STR making money, or, wants housing for less than $350,000, and at that point, that is what's considered affordable for them, which is, more than most of us paid for our houses in this town like 5 years ago. So, you think about what all these conversations look like, and it's going to be more of just a discussion. At the end of it, in each of our little subgroups, we plan to gather some data. So from like the short-term rental one, for instance, we have 3 to 5 questions that people will be able to write a response. I'll gather it all and then going to put together the data. The goal is obtained, as long as there's no exponential crisis, that we hit our July 4th deadline. And then the plan is to kind of absorb the data and get everyone together for a follow-up and what action items we can take, probably towards the end of summer. So.
What's the timeline of this? Is it in the evening, during the day?
Yes, so it's going to be, what did we decide, 6? Yeah, 6.
Okay.
And so we're thinking it'll be about a 5-10 minute introduction about how it'll go, and then split everyone up, 15 minutes per section, and you kind of rotate.
Okay.
And then you have to have a ticket, which we have the tickets, and you have to present the ticket to eat. So you only get the ticket when you go to your last section, so that we don't just get everyone coming over from the concert that night, props for the concert, trying to get a free meal. You have to have engaged in the community discussion.
Yeah.
And so my goal is 50 people, but I don't know, Karen. It might be May Day, no pun intended.
I would just like to point out there are vegetarians in the crowd.
Oh, well,
Okay.
I'll see if I can get someone to donate some corn. I'm only kidding. I don't think Shields has veggie burgers. I don't know. I'll ask Shields. No, you're coming. What can I get you? Karen, take notes.
Be creative.
Okay. I'll get you a tofu dog. All right.
So wait a minute, you're the cook?
No, my brother is
Oh, okay,
volunteering
very
his
good,
time,
okay.
propane and grill and cooking, and right where the chicken barbecue always is. And everything's donated, and people are contributing to the discussion, and I think it's going to be a good thing.
That's awesome.
It's awesome. It sounds like a real hootenanny.
And Mike, we'll take out all the proper, timelines of.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Courtney. By a show of hands, any board liaison reports? Anybody have a board liaison? Yes, Lisa.
So it's not an official report. The Energy Efficiency Committee is meeting on the 16th, so that's Thursday, and they are continuing to meet via Zoom, just due to some health concerns with some different members. And I don't want to mess up the minutes, but I think that this is a proper place to put this, is that I have solicited members for the Energy Efficiency Committee. I've had 3 people reach out to me, but they don't want to be on a full-blown committee. And so this is just something that I've put in my, notes about discussing committees, that they're super interested in the Energy Efficiency Committee. They're interested in sustainability, the Climate Action Plan, composting, but they don't want to be part of a committee. So I just thought I would mention that as we evolve our committee discussion.
Very good.
So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank
But
you.
June 16th, 6:30.
Be there or be squared. Anyone? We had a community garden committee meeting out at West Kennebunk, and they have planted the 2022 garden, and we expect good things from them. I think they have too much kale. More than one kale plant, I think, is probably too much, but. Yeah, you want kale? We
Yeah, I'll
got
have
plenty
some
of kale.
kale and corn.
Yeah, there you go, yeah. So that's the wonderful group. The Community Garden Committee has raised or harvested over 12 tons of food in the past few years, and of course all that goes to community outreach services. And so we're very proud of them, and every year they work and adjust their process to make use of things that are available, and they try to learn what things are no longer useful. I think COS has become picky about what kind of things that they'll take, so they're trying to accommodate COS's needs. Also, let's see, let's do individual select board comments. Anyone? Yes? Yes, Frank?
My understanding is steady, so busy, but not, throngs of people coming out, but very steady, they said.
Lisa?
Fingers crossed, we get our, 2,000 people voting to pass the charter revision. So thank you, everyone. We definitely had some disagreements, but we all got along in the end, so I think that that's great. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that I had sent out an email to, of course the public is gone, but an email to Mike
Chris is here.
and Blake. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Chris. I meant the public member who was discussing, I think it was Paul, discussing the liaison role. That is something that I do want to discuss as far as the role for the quasi-judicial. You'd think I'd know that word,
you would
considering
think,
where
yeah.
I work. But anyway, I think that's a conversation that we need to have, what that role is going to be. So I just wanted to get that out there. And then I was just wondering what the status of hybrid meetings are and when we're going to have them and when we're not.
We just received a quote, I believe it was yesterday, Joel, and so that will be on your agenda for the 21st at your special meeting next week, asking for approval, likely asking you to fund the dollars out of your contingency fund, but it is under $15,000 based on the proposal we received, so it'll then be just a matter of supply chain and how quickly all of that can happen, but it is advancing.
Awesome, thank you.
Ollie, anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so I have a report. Sally and I attended an event on Saturday morning at the Nonantum. It was put on by Homes for Our Troops. You may recall that name. That's the group that is building the adaptive dwelling for a wounded veteran who's going to be living in West Kennebunk. And Sally was in attendance. I was asked to speak on behalf of the community, and so I kept my remarks brief, pursuant to my wife's advice long ago when I was speaking to a graduating class at a high school. She said, nobody's there to listen to you talk, so say what you have to say and sit down. So I always try to remember that good advice. So what I did was I thanked Staff Sergeant Kevin Campbell, right? Yes. Yes, Kevin Campbell. For his service to the country. So Kevin is the gentleman who will be living in his forever home out in West Kennebunk. I also welcomed the Homes for Our Troops and suggested that we would like to see more of their efforts in our community. I said the welcome mat is out, and they seem to appreciate that. And then I did suggest that this was a rare instance where we were able to very quickly put together a win in the vexatious world of housing nowadays, where we have difficulty with things like attainable or affordable housing, below market rate units and things of that nature. We were able to quickly respond, and the House is underway. And I wished Staff Sergeant Campbell, Kevin, who's a very funny guy, many years in his forever home, and that was on behalf of the town of Kennebunk. So I think that's it. Over to, you know, I don't know. So I videotaped it. There'll be, next time. Next time, all right. Okay.
Well, thank you for representing us. I
Was
at
my honor.
son's Little League championship.
Oh, there you go.
And they
All
won.
right. Hey, so, how about that? Okay, over to Mike for an update.
Yep, very quickly. Next Tuesday, June 21st at 6:30, the board's asked to hold a special meeting. We'll be talking about vitular licenses. There you go.
Vidler.
Vitler licenses.
Vidler.
Charter Commission and union contract, the police department union contract. The 28th of June, you'll have your regular meeting, and then we'll move to July 12th, another regular meeting. August 16th and August 30th are scheduled as regular meetings as well. Monday, June 20th, the town will be recognizing Juneteenth holiday. It will be celebrated. Town offices and Department of Public Services will be closed. There is no change in the trash and recycling curbside collection scheduled for that, due to that holiday. Thursday, June 30th, I probably should add the 29th in there now, knowing about the Waterhouse Center and housing discussion. But on Thursday, June 20th, is the deadline for the Buy a Brick program at the Waterhouse Center. June 30th, Buy a Brick. The brick orders received by June 30th will be installed in early October. Brick orders received after that date will be included in next year's order. More information, kennebunkmaine.us/buy-a-brick. Monday, July 4th, Independence Day, town offices, Department of Public Services will be closed. There is no change in trash and recycling curbside collection due to that holiday, and they will be collecting on Monday holiday as well as the rest of the week as usual. And our fireworks will be on July 4th at Kennebunk Beach at dusk. Rain date will be July 5th. And don't forget your Slow Down Kennebunk yard sign is available at the town clerk's office and at the police department. We are running low again, and so we are placing yet another order. And I think that those will stand out quite a bit after the next few days and when some other signs are removed. So a great campaign, and I think we'll have some media attention focused on that coming up soon. Thank you.
And according to Michael Davis, who's sitting over my shoulder here across the hall, he has noticed a notable decrease in speed. So maybe, just maybe, this is having the intended effect. So, and remember, the idea is slow down to the speed limit or within spitting distance, as I like to say, and that has the traffic calming influence that we are seeking. So,
I like it when it tells me I'm a hero when I'm going down by the
right? Or jolly good. I love all the sayings. They're really,
You're
there's nothing
a
like
star.
positive reinforcement.
Yep.
losing my mind, I slow down. I remember I slow down.
Right? Yeah.
Does it ever tell you you're the one?
Oh, it tells me a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, when Frank goes by, you say, "Hey, big fella," or something along those lines. Yeah. So I think it's that time of evening, unless anyone else has anything.
Like to make a motion to adjourn?
Second it?
Moved and second, all in favor? None opposed. The motion to adjourn is passed 5-0-2, and we are adjourned.